Good evening, everybody. This is the regular meeting of August 19, 2024, the Gurnee Village Board. Roll call, please.
Ross.
Here.
Garner.
Here.
O'Brien.
Present.
Baums.
Present.
Thorntonson.
Here.
Woodside.
Aye. Here.
All right.
Get to say it once.
We'll all stand together for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Is there a motion for approval of consent agenda?
Second.
Motion by Trustee Balmas, second by Trustee O'Brien. Roll call, please.
Ross.
Aye.
Garner.
Aye.
Bryan.
Aye.
Baums.
Aye.
Thorntonson.
Yes.
Woodside.
Aye.
6 aye.
Motion carries. Pat?
Item number 1, approval of the minutes from the August 5th, 2024 meeting. Item number 2, approval of payroll for period ending August 9th, 2024 in the amount of $1,066,403.79. Item number 3, approval of bills for period ending August 19th, 2024 in the amount of $2,245,443.16.
Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Motion by Trustee Garner, second by Trustee Ross. Roll call, please.
Ross.
Aye.
Garner.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Baums.
Aye.
Thorntonson.
Yes.
Woodside.
Aye.
6 aye.
Motion carries. So there's no petitions and communications, no reports, no business, but we do have the matter of next week's meeting, Committee of the Whole. Is there a motion? I understand there's nothing for that meeting, so is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Trustee Thorstenson, second by Trustee Balmas. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
So on to the business that we've been waiting a couple months for. So I just have a few things I want to say, and then you'll see myself and Kevin Woodside, Trustee Woodside, leave the room, and then there'll be, the meeting will continue on. So I just want to just talk about a couple things. One is that I think that in the 12 years that I've sat here, both as a trustee and a mayor, that we've never had an issue that I can recall where we've had neighbors on both sides of the issue as strong as we have had this time. Normally, it's been neighbors against the petitioner, and in this case, that hasn't been the case. So I could just say that by observing that and observing people and their testimony, that to a person, no matter which side you're on, whether you're for pads being at the Fair Bridge or not, I've heard pretty much everybody say that they want to address the homeless issue and people in need, and I've heard that from both sides. So you're going to hear me after this is complete, whether it's a yes that pads goes to Fair Bridge or no, that I'll be asking the citizens of all of Gurnee, not just the east side, to step up and be part of volunteering and answering the call for a need that we do have. And I think this has brought it into, to bring to light that maybe something I didn't realize was as severe or as important of an issue as you've brought to my attention, and I think to the trustees as well. So this is really an important issue, but I don't want it to end here tonight. Like I said, it's just sometimes it's easy to fight over one issue and then have it go back to the way it was. And that just isn't acceptable for us in the village of Gurnee, and I think everybody agrees that we live in a great community. And this is just one of those things we need to improve upon. It's not that we're at the bottom and we're a horrible place to live. We're a great place to live, but this is a place we need to improve on. So I just want to observe a couple things. I would say that from the trustees' perspective, they haven't really had a chance, or they haven't had a chance to speak, and that's been really difficult. This has been hard on them to listen to their neighbors on both sides to try to decide what the right thing to do was. So this is a very, very difficult decision for them. And I've talked to each one of them individually and heard their struggles. They've seen your letters, they've heard your comments, and it's just been hard to digest over the last couple of months. So I just would want to recognize them for their hard work. Specifically, I'd want to recognize Trustee Woodside. He's been put in a very, very, very difficult spot. I've known him for many, many years. He's an honorable gentleman. He has served the village of Gurnee in a very honorable way as a police officer, as our chief of police. I personally asked him to be a trustee on the board because I didn't want to lose his institutional knowledge, and I'm really, really glad that he decided to say yes. This has been hard for him, and he hasn't had an opportunity to speak to you guys, and that's the appropriate thing at this point. But I can say something and just say that I just want to honor him for his role in the village and that he is a good man. So next is staff. Sometimes behind the scenes, we don't realize all the work they do. I could just take one little snippet out and say that that one long meeting that we had, 6 hours worth of testimony, was a yeoman's effort by our staff to transcribe so that we could see what was said and read that, so that we can, maybe we wouldn't stay up until 1:30 in the morning, but we got to see everything that was said. So I just say not only that, but the staff has had a lot of work to do in this project, and I want to just recognize them. So as far as looking at this, I really want to look forward. That this isn't, as I said, this is more about what happens next as opposed to what the decision is tonight, because no matter what happens, we still have to deal with this. So I just want to talk a little bit about how the voting is going to go and some of my observations. I can't vote tonight for two reasons. One is that because of the way the planning and zoning decided against the special use, the law indicates that I can't be part of the voting. There has to be 4 trustees that vote affirmatively for this in order to pass. So it'll be difficult to, and I want to make sure you understand this part so that when we go through it, it's not a mystery when the vote comes out. However it comes out, you'll know the result. So the first item on the agenda is going to be about the text amendment. And there will be 5 trustees, Trustee Woodside and myself won't be in the room, that there will be 5 trustees that will consider. They'll make their comments. There'll be a presentation given by the petitioner for 15 minutes, and there'll be, which will have a PowerPoint slide, as my understanding, slides, and then there'll be a 15-minute presentation by the opposition. I know that isn't probably the best words for it, right? But people that don't want to see pads go at the Fairbridge location, they will have an opportunity to speak for 15 minutes. Now, either side can have individuals come up and talk, or they could just, one person talk the whole 15 minutes. That's just your choice. But at the end of the 15 minutes, we're going to honor that, is at the end of 15 minutes, it's not going to be a public comment. It's just going to stop. And then it's going to come back up to the board. The floor will be closed, and then there'll be an opportunity for a motion on that text amendment. And you'll then hear some comments or statements by some or all of the trustees based on what they believe they've seen, and then there'll be a vote taken. And again, it has to be 4 affirmative votes, and there can only be 1 dissent. And what that means is that even though there might be 3 people that vote yes and 2 people that vote no, it's a majority, that won't be enough. The result will be a fail, which means that the text amendment won't be granted. And then the next item is a special use permit, and the special use permit won't go forward because the text amendment wasn't granted. So there'll only be 1 vote in that case. If it's a successful vote where there's 4 people that vote for it, 4 trustees, and 1 or 5 vote for it, and there's no against, then in that case, it'll move on to the special use permit, and the same thing applies in that case. Again, it has to be 4 votes for, 1 vote against. And if that fails, if it ends up being 3-2 or 2-3, whatever, something less than 4-1, then again, it fails. So just to be clear on how it works, and you just need to hear 4 trustees say yes on both, then you know that it's a success. And in that case, then pads would be granted the ability to be able to complete their purchase with Fairbridge. They will be able to then renovate it as they've planned, and they will then be able to move forward within the restrictions that they've been provided by the Village of Gurnee. If the answer is no, they will not be able to move forward with their plans. I'm not sure how the results, they're not going to purchase Fairbridge if they can't use pads or place pads in there, and I'm not sure what will happen after that exactly. So, again, that's just important to me because it'll be easy to think that if there's 3, 4, and 2 against or something like that, that to think that the majority wins. And it's just, in this case, the statute, it's a law. It's not us making this up. The law requires this in all cases like this. So my voting, for instance, it's just against the law for me to vote in special use, and the same thing for Trustee Woodside. It's against the law for him to vote based on our circumstances. So this isn't something that we'd prefer to do or not do. It's just the way it works out, and we want to make sure it's done right. There's a lot of people that are depending on the decisions being made, so we want to make sure it's correct. And we've spent a lot of time. We really appreciate our legal counsel in providing us direction on this. This hasn't been that easy to navigate. So I think I've handled that. The public comment will happen after the vote is taken. There'll be, actually after the vote is taken, there'll be a short recess to give you an opportunity. If you want to leave at that time, that's up to you. Or if you'd like to make a public comment afterwards. So there won't be any public comment prior to the vote. So anybody that would like to make a prior comment, like as you have throughout this entire time, it's the same situation. You stand up in the mic and state your name, and you have an opportunity to say whatever you like. It doesn't have to be about this issue tonight. It always can be about anything else. So I think that covers everything that I really wanted to talk about. Again, what's near and dear to my heart is that we come out of this well. That however it goes, that we have work to do, and I want to do it with you, and so do the trustees. And we just appreciate your desire to be here. I think there's been some hard things said, some feelings hurt along the way. I hope we can leave some of those things behind, or all of those things behind, and focus on the things that we have to do. But I do appreciate you being here. You show that you are concerned about the village, and that's important to me. If there was no one present and this was happening, then I'd say, well, we're in trouble. So we're not in trouble. The next item on the agenda then is...
You and Kevin exiting?
Yep, I leave.
Over.
It's like hit and run, right? I get to say what I want and then just walk out. No.
And then also, Madam Clerk, if you could indicate in the minutes that the mayor has recused himself from the next 2 items, and that the same for Mr. Woodside, Trustee Woodside, he will be abstaining from the next 2 items, so please indicate the recusal and the abstention as part of the record. At this time.
Yes. So at this time, it would be appropriate to have a motion for a chair pro tem to see over the rest of the meeting.
I move for Trustee Balmas to be our mayor pro tem.
Okay, I have a motion from Trustee Ross,
I second the motion.
a second from Trustee Garner for Trustee Balmas to serve as pro tem. Can I have a roll call, please? Selene?
Ross.
Aye.
Garner.
Aye.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Balms.
Aye.
Thornton.
Yes.
All right, 5, that carries.
4 ayes.
All right. Okay, moving on to the meeting under new business. Approval of ordinance 2024,
58.
granting a zoning text amendment to Article 7.1.2 of the Gurnee zoning ordinance entitled Use Permissions to add emergency shelter as a special use permit within the EGG zoning district.
Sure. So I will provide a summary on both these issues since they're related. I had a pretty detailed memo from our planning administrator, Autrian, village attorney Winter, and our community development director, Dave Ziegler. So I think the board is pretty well versed, but just a reminder. So Petitioner, Paz Lake County, not-for-profit homeless service organizations looking to purchase the Fairbridge Inn property and convert it to an emergency shelter. It's currently zoned C2 district in the EGG overlay, which does not permit an emergency shelter currently by right or special use permit. PADS is proposing a text amendment to Article 7 of the zoning ordinance entitled Special Purpose Districts to amend and permit emergency shelters in the GGG overlay as a special use permit. So that is the first item. The second item is the special use permit itself. So again, detailed memo included in your packet. So if the text amendment is successful, they're looking to convert the property into a fixed shelter with 30 sleeping rooms. 2 to 3 residents will occupy each shelter room depending on the room sizes and the building code allowances. Each room will be equipped with sleeping areas, a private bathroom, microwave, and lighting. No cooking instruments other than the microwave are allowed in the rooms. Security cameras installed around the building perimeter to provide complete site coverage. Doors will be equipped with a security system to restrict unauthorized entry into the building, except for the main entrance, which will be staffed. There's a screening process which applicants must go through before being allowed onto the property, so that would take place at PAD site in Waukegan. Stays limited to 90 days max unless extended based on progress related to finding housing or employments. There's on-site comprehensive programming that will take place, including mental health, employment, workforce development services, life skills, and engaging in those programmings as part of the agreement to be able to stay at the site. Some exterior improvements, new lighting on the building, some minor modifications to the entrance, restriping the parking lot, some landscape islands, and then closing off the entrance off of Grand Avenue, so that access will be closed. So the first item, the text amendment, was before the Planning and Zoning Board on July 21st. That received a unanimous favorable recommendation, 5-0 from the PZB. Second item was before the PZB the same night. That received a unfavorable recommendation, only 1 aye vote, 4 nay votes from the Planning and Zoning Board.
All right. We will be giving the 15 minutes will now be provided by the applicant, and then 15 minutes thereafter will be provided to the representatives opposed to the pending application. And we'll give you a 1-minute warning for the summation.
Awesome. I'm never good with this stuff, so I appreciate the warnings. I'd like to thank Mayor Hood and the esteemed Board of Trustees and our dedicated Village of Gurnee staff for the consideration of our proposal to transform the Fairbridge Inn into a fixed-site shelter. You've received emails and lots of information on the project. So today you'll hear from George Casile, planning and zoning land expert, and me about the details of the project. George will start first with a review of the standards and the conditional use permit and some of the crime data that we've organized. The reason that we're starting with the conditional use permit is because that was the item that was that received the negative recommendation.
Good evening, everyone. My name is George Kissel. I'm the president of Okrent Kissel Associates with offices at 141 West Jackson in Chicago. I'm both a licensed architect and certified planner with over 40 years of experience. I was engaged by PADS to provide an evaluation of the proposed semi-private, non-congregate shelter, providing on-site supportive services at the subject property. Since the submittal package contains my report, which states my conclusions and opinions and provides factual evidence and support, I just want to briefly touch on a few things. One of the major issues the community has voiced on this matter is a potential effect on crime in the area. We study this extensively and have prior experience analyzing police report data in a land use context. In order to understand the existing condition, along with any potential impact from PADS clientele's presence on the site, we looked at the police report data for both Beat 82 and Beat 96, which includes the subject property and the entirety of the East Grand Gateway District and the surrounding residential areas from 2017 to the present. So I'm just going to walk through each year here. What you're seeing on the screen is a map to the left, which shows the distribution of police reports, and the graph on the right, which goes year by year, tabulating how many of those are attributed to Beat 96, to Beat 82, and to the subject property. So in 2017, you can see the clustering of police calls around the intersection of Waveland and Grand Avenue, a total of 223 calls with 21 attributable to the subject property. If you have the next slide. 2018, here we have 30 attributable out of 278. And next slide, please. 2019, 252 and 41 attributable to the subject property. 2020 is a COVID year, so you see a bit of a reduction in overall activity, 50 attributable to the subject property. And these 4 years, there was no presence of PADS clientele at the subject property. This is the period before they began renting rooms and occupying a portion of the available occupancy. Next slide, please. 2021, the first year, we have 252 incidents throughout both beats with 50 at the subject property. During that period of time, there was only about 3% of the available capacity was occupied by PADS. 2022, you see 225 and 55. Again, only about 3.6%. And we're moving on to 2023, we have only about 175 with 23 attributable to the subject property. Again, only 3% occupancy. The 2024 data is prorated based on the first 6 months of the year. So projecting that out, you could expect about 190 total for both beats with about 24 attributable to the subject property. During that period of time, it's projected that PADS would have 30% occupancy. So the conclusions that we draw from this is that there's been significant report volume at the subject property before PADS clients were present. This is an existing condition. And that during their presence, which was very modest in terms of the percentage of capacity, there was no increase in report volume. Next slide, please. Next, with respect to whether this is the right location for this facility, we know that the Planning and Zoning Board recommends approval of the text amendment allowing emergency shelter uses in the East Grand Gateway District. As staff indicates, homeless shelters benefit from locations near arterials, within walking distance of adequate public services and facilities, within commercial centers with access to community resources such as public transit, employment, and places of worship and other social services. That's exactly what the East Grand Gateway Overlay District has. The subject property itself benefits from these attributes. A Pace bus stop, 565, is located at the southwest corner of the site. It's completely surrounded by commercial uses, and it's developed with a structure that was similar in use and easily converted to the proposed emergency shelter use. It's important to note that there are no vacant developable parcels within the district, and adaptive reuse is the only feasible venue to establish an emergency shelter within that district, and that this site does represent the best opportunity for that. The proposed emergency shelter use is similar to the nearby assisted senior living facility in its density and intensity of use, hours of activity and operation, traffic and parking demand, and demand on public services. For these reasons, it's also compatible with the overall mixed-use character of the East Grand Gateway District from a general land use perspective. Finally, given the time constraints now, I'm just going to quickly go over the findings with regard to the 4 standards for special uses that the board is charged with considering with respect to this proposal before I'm going to turn it back over to the applicant. With respect to the first standard, the establishment, maintenance, and operation of the proposal will not endanger the public health, safety, and welfare, in that the proposed use does not involve any characteristics that would cause an increase in the danger from fire, explosion, contamination, noise, odor, vibration, or any other environmental impact. As cited in the report, studies indicate this type of facility does not have a negative impact on the value of a surrounding property, nor does it significantly increase crime in their vicinity. The proposed facility is similar in size and capacity to others and not extraordinary. The proposed facility would be operated by PADS Lake County, a local experienced and established provider. The presence of PADS at the subject property, as we just seen, has not resulted in an increase in crime. Then the proposed facility will provide 24-hour access to shelter and support services and will have the effect of removing the unhoused from the streets, public spaces, and unmonitored vacant properties. With respect to the second standard, whether it's compatible with the general land use surrounding the property, the emergency shelter functions in a similar manner as multifamily residential uses, which are not in conflict with the Grand Gateway Overlay District, commercial uses, nor the surrounding residential district uses. The shelter is compatible with the surrounding businesses with respect to traffic generation, parking, demand, noise, odor, vibration, and hours of activity. These are all land use considerations. With respect to the third standard, It's consistent with the spirit and intent of the Village of Gurnee Ordinance and the adopted land use policies in that it provides a development scenario that can leverage public funds for investment in the East Gateway District where no private investment has been forthcoming. It provides development where those public funds can be employed to upgrade streetscape and transportation conditions consistent with planning studies. And it provides a development similar to multifamily housing that can increase customer base for nearby compatible businesses that service lower income clientele. The fourth standard is basically mechanical. It's whether it complies with the regulations of the zoning ordinance as an existing building, built to the regulations in place when it was built. It conforms, and no modifications are contemplated that would be subject to current zoning regulations. So based on this, it's my opinion that the standards for evaluation of special uses are met by this proposal. With that, I'll turn it back over to Alan Swilly for final comments.
Okay, I'd like to share a little bit about how we came to purchase the Fairbridge Inn, or at least pursued the Fairbridge Inn. When I started August 28th last year, we had just been rejected for the extended stay hometown studios, and it was, they wanted $3 million over the asking price for the property. It was something that we just couldn't afford. We then, obviously, before that, pursued multiple options to the tune of about 48 of those options. We also pursued the Ramada Inn, and after doing a walkthrough with the Ramada Inn and getting an idea for what it would cost us, we were looking at about $55 to $60 million in renovation costs, which is about 5 times the size of our budget. And so what we were generally looking for was a hotel with at least 35 rooms, and it needed to have inside entry and exit so that we can control the flow, and it needed to be near public transportation and was in an area of need and could be renovated in under 1 year and within our budget, obviously. And obviously, we needed a seller that was willing to sell. We found all of these at the Fairbridge Inn. One of the main opportunities that I saw was an opportunity to add value to the community, renovate a dilapidated property, and get our homeless neighbors off the street. Next slide, please. And so the shelter should be in an area of need. You've seen a lot of data about Gurnee and some of the challenges that they have. You should know that over the last 12 months, we have sheltered 126 Gurnee households in our shelter program. And so there is a need that we see in Gurnee, and Gurnee does represent the 4th largest request for basic needs like housing and shelter. You've heard about the property and special use conforms to the area. I wanted to share 2 things about how the property, how the opportunity benefits Gurnee, and also I want to share how the shelter will be run really quickly. Next slide, please. So for decades, the revitalization of the East Grand Corridor has been a priority of the village of Gurnee. One of the challenges with the East Grand Corridor is the lack of private investment into the area. Rents are low, making return on investment capital low, ultimately keeping things the same. And the dilapidated hotel is one of the anchors of these challenges. The owner of Fairbridge follows the same business structure with low rents, low investment, which attracts a certain kind of market. If the owner were to invest significantly in that hotel, then he would need to push costs, rental costs up to the consumer, and that would price him out of his market, but also price him out of a more affluent market because of the location of the property. And so it's kind of a catch-22, this property. The Village of Gurnee has done their part by allocating 30% of total village capital investment into the East Grand neighborhood, even though the community represents 9.5% of the population. So there's this lack of private investment. There's this continued village effort to invest in the area, and the $7 million investment into an underperforming hotel reflects public investment from non-local sources designated specifically for community development and improvement while responding to specific social challenges like homelessness. The nonprofit economy is a $1 trillion economy, meaning over $8 trillion managing over $8 trillion in assets. This project has the opportunity to be a catalyst for public investment through PADS, but it also has an opportunity to attract other public investment through the collaboration of the programmatic components that we intend to have on site. And so what I'm saying is that there's not attraction for private investment. There has been village investment, and now there's an opportunity for public investment to transform the East Grand Gateway, and we're here to do that. Should PADS special use be approved, we will work immediately to close down the property and start renovations right away. We would anticipate a spring or summer opening. Next slide, please. The compatibility here, there's compatibility with other residential facilities like George mentioned, and there you can see that here on the slide. One thing I wanted to mention was that the shelter is no different from the hotel operations in three ways. The shelter has established 90-day residencies instead of 28-day residencies. The shelter houses a known population rather than an unknown population, and there would be 8 times the number of staff on site than the current staff and structure that we see. So these small differences, are not enough to vote down the project, but I do recognize that we're dealing with a heavy homeless stigma, and that influences our decision making, but I don't want that to cloud our judgment. Next slide, please.
You're at the 1 minute.
1 minute mark, I'm gonna run. So more control over the property. This is really important. The current hotel indirectly supports and harbors crime where sex offenders live, and incidents occur. We all heard April Rezzik's testimony of a resident in her shelter at DuPage PADS who fled human trafficking from Lake County. The resident was chained to a toilet and brought from slum hotel to slum hotel, performing acts of money. Hotels have no way of managing this crime potential, but PADS does. Our screening process ensures that we know who is coming into shelter. We rely on sex offender background checks, county residency. We check for literal homelessness. We also assess for appropriateness for shelter and general criminal background checks. We use criminal background checks to assess the full profile of a client. The screening process has kept volunteers and our staff safe for decades. Drug tests have also been a question raised. While PADS has conducted drug tests as a condition of someone's service agreement, conducting drug tests to restrict access to shelter goes against our funding requirements that push us to serve all disabilities. A substance use disorder is a disability. Additionally, alcohol and illegal substances are not allowed on the shelter premises. The structure of the property and the proposed security features will allow us to ultimately control the property and who comes in with a monitored one-way in, one-way out door, security cameras, and progressive motion-centered lighting. We can keep our residents and our staff safe from the crime outdoors. There's more that needs to be shared here, but I'm guessing that there will be questions that you guys have around the programmatic components of the shelter, so I'm here to answer any of those.
Thank you very much. And now we will hear from the opposition to this application.
All right. Good evening. My name is Jory Stuckwish. I live on Belle Plaine Avenue, and I am a spokesperson for the community members not in favor of the Fairbridge Inn as a location for an adult low-barrier shelter. We actually considered having matching T-shirts for our supporters to wear tonight, but we have learned that the other fixed-site shelters in nearby counties often don't have volunteers to provide meals for their residents. So instead of T-shirts, we made a donation to the Warren Township Food Pantry. Local food pantries are used to supplement food to shelter occupants, and the food pantry helps prevent homelessness by providing food to economically vulnerable residents. Because of our community members' support, we were able to donate $1,200 to the Warren Township Food Pantry. We hope this donation demonstrates our commitment to being part of the solution. It's just a small first step in what we know must be a unified effort by everyone in Gurnee to find a location in Lake County to help alleviate the growing unhoused problem. Tonight, we are asking the Village Board to reject PAD's request for a text amendment for the EGG overlay district and to uphold the PZB decision to reject PAD's request for the special use permit. The special use permit request does not meet the approval standards. We presented on this in detail at the PZB meeting on July 24th, and 4 out of the 5 PZB board members voted in agreement on this. PAD's proposal for a fixed site shelter is an example of a great idea, wrong location, similar to the statement made by a PZB member about a recent proposal for a multifamily home development. Despite the concept of a homeless shelter being an emotionally charged issue, the fact remains this is a zoning issue, and all developments should be held to the same standards. And as a PZB board member stated at that meeting, the board has held others to these standards in the past. Oh, sorry, go to the next slide. The PADS application does not meet the criteria for a text amendment. Is it not moving forward? Can we pause the time restriction for a moment?
Sure.
Okay. You could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. In regards to the first approval standard, by now the village board is familiar with the alarming details of the proposed shelter that would endanger the public safety and welfare. You can see the details listed here. Next slide. The village board is also now well aware of the vulnerable population in the neighborhood in which the shelter would be located. You can see the details listed here. Next slide. It's well documented and well known that the EGG is a vulnerable, economically distressed area. It's a community of low to moderate income families and minority populations of 25% or more. You can see the challenges the businesses face just by looking at the empty storefronts and dilapidated commercial buildings along Grand Avenue. And the area has a D to an F crime rating. East Gurnee needs your help to revitalize the area. We do not need a shelter at which there are rules attempting to limit the crime. We need a commercial business with no crime. Next slide. PADS has argued that turning the hotel into a shelter will improve the area. But we know PADS has already been sheltering the homeless at the Fairbridge Inn since the beginning of the pandemic, and in this time, conditions have worsened and crime has significantly increased. We have previously presented the supporting data on this. You will notice PADS bar graph, the data is prorated for the year of 2024. But most importantly, you have heard and read the personal testimonials about the impact that Fairbridge, being used as an emergency shelter, has had on the community members and businesses in the area. You've even heard from someone who lives there, the PADS registration office, and the impact that this has had on her neighborhood. You have a handout with the FOIA reports that show the increase in crime at the 1800 Grand Avenue area in the past 3 years. First, the shelter would increase the number of unhoused at that property. PADS has said that currently a small percentage of the total capacity of the Fairbridge are PADS clients. The shelter would increase this number up to 90 people, resulting in a much higher concentration of unhoused compared to the last 4 years. The shelter would also bring unhoused adults from all throughout Lake County, not simply addressing the existing issue of homelessness here in Waukegan and Gurnee. The resources of this already economically distressed area will be strained even further by bringing more unhoused to the area. And again, this low barrier shelter will have minimal controls and does not exclude any past felony other than sex offender status. An estimated 20% of shelter occupants fail to transition to permanent housing. That means approximately 72 unhoused adults each year will remain unhoused in our area when they leave Fairbridge. And perhaps the most important thing to remember is that whatever promises are made, PADS cannot control what occupants do off the property. They're free to go where they want, and PADS can't monitor or regulate what their clients do when they leave. We would also like to know who is liable if a crime is committed or someone is physically harmed by a PADS client while they are off the property. Is the village of Gurnee liable, or is it PADS? There is a letter circulating that the village board received from an Evanston council member regarding Evanston's experience with the Margarita Inn shelter. Next slide, go ahead. Attempting to draw comparisons between the Margarita Inn in Evanston and the proposed shelter at the Fairbridge Inn falls short in a number of significant ways. First, the neighborhood agreement for the Evanston shelter was signed only by the Evanston mayor and the Connections for the Homeless CEO, and any such agreement, while a nice gesture, is not legally enforceable. In fact, the neighbors of the Margarita Inn drew up an alternative neighborhood agreement because they were not happy with the conditions agreed upon. Second, we have previously presented data on this Evanston shelter that shows the increase in police calls, as well as 2 active lawsuits brought by neighboring property owners. Third, and more to the point, given the economic conditions in the East Grand Gateway, the Margarita Inn is a family shelter located in a more affluent area in Evanston with a more robust infrastructure and economic stability. The Fairbridge site would be an adult shelter and would do nothing to improve this economically distressed area. You can go ahead and move along to the slide that says Travel Lodge on Fairbridge at the top. The Travel Lodge PADS Family Shelter and the proposed Fairbridge Adult Shelter will be the only 2 major fixed site shelters in all of Lake County, just 5 miles apart. This area will become the primary location for the unhoused of all of Lake County. Despite PAD's assertion that this is part of a larger vision of a network of shelters, they have provided no evidence or specifics of this plan. We have no idea how many years it would take to create this network, and in the meantime, how long the strain on resources would be placed solely on Waukegan and Gurnee. Saturating one area with unhoused from all of Lake County will place an unsustainable strain on resources. Paz just mentioned that Heritage Homes and Assisi Senior Living are already servicing the homeless. So again, to the point of saturating the area, and Gurnee is already doing their part. Next slide. The majority of the people in the community, residents and businesses, most directly impacted by this decision, are not in favor of this location. Here we have listed the businesses whose owners and or managers who have signed our petition. Jerry from Gurnee Garden Center will now speak with the perspective of one of these business owners.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Locks, and my wife Shirley and I have owned and operated the Gurnee Garden Center for 51 years. And while I am speaking for myself, I believe that my concerns are shared by all the business owners in the East Grand Corridor. I have employed over 700 people since we've been open. We currently employ 53 people, 23 are young people, many of whom live in Gurnee, and the rest are mostly women, many of whom also live in Gurnee. I believe if this facility is allowed to go in, the panhandling, interactions with PADS clients, and increased police presence will make my employees and customers very uncomfortable to the point of not working or shopping at the Gurnee Garden Center. Several of my employees have already told me they will not return if this facility goes in. I believe it will be devastating for the East Grand Corridor. The panhandling will be constantly occurring on several corners at Grand and 41. Businesses, including mine, will probably go under, and there will be empty storefronts and buildings. the east side of the village will become blighted. The goal of paths is a good one. It just doesn't belong here. The businesses on the east side have suffered through the construction of the new entrance and exit ramps at Route 41 in 2009, and then 5 years of lane closures for the new bridge and intersection widening. This has caused some businesses to close, and the rest of us were teetering on the brink. We haven't fully recovered yet. 34 of East Grand business owners have signed a petition opposing this facility. We need help in revitalizing the East Grand corridor, and this facility will be a detriment. On behalf of all the businesses on the east side, please vote no. Thank you.
Which brings me to the second text amendment criteria. Next slide, please. The 2040 Gurnee Comprehensive Plan states, areas with smaller and more affordable commercial units that are nearby residential neighborhoods, such as the East Grand Avenue Gateway, should be targeted for new small businesses. We've had amazing feedback from the community with ideas for other uses for the Fairbridge, but the people in the best position to make decisions about what could go here are Ellen Dean and her staff. Let's get economic development involved in ideas for future possible uses and hear what they think this would impact Gurnee. Listed here, next slide please, listed here are some of the reasons Fairbridge is not in the best interest of the unhoused, which we have previously presented on and I believe the board is now familiar with. Next slide. The unhoused deserve a better solution than this. Going forward, we want to help identify a better alternative. These are some of the sites we've identified in our research, all of which could house more people. First two properties of ones we previously presented on, you can go to the next slide. We also have some additional sites that deserve looking into further. The Super 8 in Mundelein, PADS is currently housing clients here at 70 rooms on 1.5 acres. Possibly this would even provide room to build a satellite registration office on site, kitchen and laundry rooms there. 1919 Freedom Court Zion is a property with a partial construction. It has Pace bus service that goes to the PADS registration office. Both of these are cities identified by PADS as in the top 10 of need. Woodspring Suites in Libertyville, PADS is currently housing clients here as well. So what to do about Fairbridge? The current owner, V Capital LLC, is a real estate investor who purchased the property in October for $1.1 million and contracted with PADS to sell the property 4 months later for $2 million. The current owner is motivated to sell. This leaves the door open to many possibilities for what can be done with this property. Other options include rezoning the property using the LaSalle-Sinclair factors or condemning and acquiring the property via eminent domain. In closing, Alan Swilley, you can go to the next slide. Alan Swilley has spoken previously of courage when making your decisions tonight, and we agree. It's easy to see there's political pressure on this project, but it's not enough to want to do a good thing. We need to do a good thing the right way. We believe that the right way is to consider the needs of all Gurnee residents. The right way is to admit that Fairbridge is more than just an eyesore in need of some fencing and landscaping, but rather a result of the village delaying doing its part to help find lasting solutions to the problems of the East Side. The right way will be to help the East Side achieve the level of safety and welfare that the rest of the village enjoys. Another word that describes East Gurnee is resilient. The East Gurnee community has shown resilience through the 10 years of construction on Route 41. They've shown...
Warning is here.
Okay. We had some technical difficulties, but I'm moving along. I'm closing. Resilience and waiting for empty commercial properties to become U-Haul and Harbor Freight, and will continue to be resilient while efforts are made to bring a flourishing business to the Fairbridge property. Moving forward, we're committed to continuing serious efforts to revitalize East Gurnee. Addressing homelessness needs to be a part of this. We've been researching existing programs, including Fill a Heart for Kids and Bernie's Food Bank, which with the family shelter at Travel Lodge, it's going to be essential that we provide local access to these resources for homeless children. Moving forward, let's explore effective ways to prevent homelessness and serve the homeless that benefit the entire community. Let's create a true win-win for all of Gurnee.
Thank you. Please. All right, thank you both for your presentations. I will now call the agenda item for deliberations and a vote. Each ordinance is stated in the affirmative. After the motion has been made and seconded, I will call for deliberation and the vote. When I call for the vote, if you are in favor of the text amendment, vote yes. If opposed, vote no. Vote no. 4 affirmative votes will be required to pass the ordinance. Is there a motion for the approval of ordinance 2024-58, granting a zoning text amendment to Article 7.1.2 of the Gurnee zoning ordinance entitled Use Permissions to add emergency shelter as a special use permit within the EGG zoning district?
So moved.
I have a motion by Trustee O'Brien. Second by Trustee Ross. Okay, I will look to the right since you're heavily attended down there. So.
Very good.
Going first.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Are you calling on somebody?
Yeah. Oh, who wants to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
All right. Trustee Ross?
Okay. It's been really hard to sit here and listen and not be able to say anything, but I do want to make several statements. I've listened to every speaker, read every email and every letter. I have empathy for all parties involved. It's truly a dilemma. I hear the voices of fear and anger and division and mistrust, and it pains me because I've always thought of goodwill and compassion as elements of Gurnee. When I think of Gurnee, I view all of Gurnee, and I don't ever think of East and West, and I'm surprised when people have such strong feelings. Is the dividing line Route 41, or is it the tollway? It depends on who's doing the comparing. We don't have a property tax for the village. We do pay school taxes, library taxes, park district, forest preserve, township, and county taxes. But look at your tax bill, and you won't see the village of Gurnee listed. So all of your services, such as taking care of the roads, snow removal, water infrastructure, fire protection, rescue services, police protection, and more, are provided because of healthy sales and tourism tax revenues. Our dedicated staff does an excellent job of providing services to all of Gurnee. It doesn't depend on your address. Our staff carefully reviewed all aspects of this proposal and determined that it was thorough and accurate. I respect the professionalism of our staff. We have heard people say, we love our home, our neighbors, our neighborhood. We were asked to drive through, and we saw well-kept homes with beautiful landscaping and children playing outside. I've personally been to the Gurnee Garden Center at least 6 times since May, and I've never felt threatened by the environment. The only major thing I found objectionable on the east side, East Grand Corridor, was the dilapidated Fairbridge Inn. I don't doubt that people have had problems, but the sad truth is there are panhandlers, car break-ins in many sections of Gurnee, especially since the pandemic. We can all agree that the police have been called to the Fairbridge Inn too many times. And this has been the case for many years, not just the last couple of years since a few PADS clients have been housed there without direct supportive services. I have spoken with many people who can't believe that the neighborhood wouldn't want this eyesore to be improved so that we can more effectively attract additional businesses. Many of the emails and letters start out as supportive of PADS and worrying about the unhoused and helping them, but then it goes to fear and not here. I also want to say that Kevin Woodside is an honorable trustee. He was on the PADS board before he ran for trustee. It was considered an asset to have his police knowledge and his compassion for the less fortunate. He knew when PADS was first considering Gurnee that he would not be able to vote on the issue. Any other insinuations are completely inaccurate. And technically, Tom Hood would not have had to recuse himself from the discussion or vote, but he chose to do so to remove any suggestion of impropriety. His son's business has no relationship or impact on village decisions. While I support the ability to form an opposition group, I think it might have the opposite effect of what is intended. I could cite a number of examples that happened in Gurnee, but I'll cite just one that happened a long time ago. It was before I was on the village board, but I was on the plan commission at the time. There was a company that wanted to build across a 4-lane highway from a subdivision that would have had 1 or 2 semi-trucks delivering and leaving every day. There was a group that was organized, very vocal about not wanting having more trucks going by their subdivision. That objection is almost laughable to us now because current ordering online has resulted in increased truck traffic everywhere. But the voices influenced the village board and they voted it down. It took approximately 16 years before anyone seriously looked at that property again. And I fear the same thing might happen here, because the owner of the Fairbridge Inn does not really want to sell the property as seen by the high asking price. So it may be years before we get the opportunity to see an improvement at that site, and the related problems will only increase. When people want to create a business in Gurnee, they go to our economic development director, our community development director, and as trustees, if we hear of an opportunity, we can refer that to the proper individuals. But we cannot make businesses come to Gurnee or a particular area of Gurnee. These are cultivated relationships, and the business owner has the choice of the action they wish to take. And it hurts us all if a business closes. People who have toured the similar fixed-site shelters and reported on positive and the hopeful nature of these facilities. They were clean, well-managed, and the people were busy with their program. We all agree that the issue of unhoused is growing and it impacts the entire Lake County community. I believe we all need to work together to create steps that will lead to long-term solutions. If we fail to act, the program will only get worse. I'm sure that if this passes, PADS will do everything possible to make this a success. They want to have other shelters in other areas of the county, so this could serve as a model for other fixed-site shelters. Since PADS first began operating in the county, they have learned from their successes and failures and are engaged in continuous improvements to their system. If this doesn't pass tonight, I hope that everyone will be patient because it will take a long time to get the improvements that you desire. If this passes, I hope that both the opposition and the supporters work together with us and PADS to ensure this transition is successful and creates an improved environment for the East Grand Corridor.
That's it. Thank you. Anyone else? Trustee O'Brien?
Thank you. And thank you to everyone. I believe this is first and foremost a zoning question. The question is, are we going to add one extra permitted use called Emergency Shelter to the East Grand Gateway Overlay District. By adding the use, it opens up the entire district to any emergency shelter at any location, subject to a special use permit, including the 2 nearby senior facilities, which I just learned have been used by homeless and low income. Also, while the property at Grand and Waveland is surrounded by C2 zoning, there are other locations within the East Grand Gateway Overlay District that abut to residential zoning, which would require buffering and screening. So other areas do have plans in place in case those are under consideration as well. It should be noted that a Red Cross type of emergency is considered a temporary emergency shelter and can be granted a temporary use permit by the zoning administrator. Also, an emergency shelter is already allowed in the C3 zoning district as a special use permit. And lastly, Gurnee defines emergency shelter as temporary housing and not permanent or fixed. There are 3 approval standards for adding a permitted use. Will the change promote the public health, safety, and welfare of Gurnee? Is the change consistent with the 2020 comp plan and adopted land use policies? Is the change consistent with the intent and regulations of this ordinance? To the first point, the health, safety, and welfare of the people entering the shelter will be improved. I do not, however, see the health and welfare of the current residents of the East Side improved. I also further believe that there may be increased safety to the current residents of the East Side based on what PADS has presented regarding limited access, screening, door monitoring, rules, etc. Standard number 2. The 2020 comp plan actually calls this area a gateway into Gurnee, encouraging small to medium retail services and mixed use to promote pedestrian connectivity. With vision and effort, the EGGOD could be the downtown that everyone wants, with cute shops, services, and walkability. The comp plan makes no mention of a fixed site shelter. The third standard we have to look at is standard 7.0.1. Actually says that the East Grand Gateway Overlay District is intended to provide opportunities that create a gateway or a sense of arrival into Gurnee from the east and reinforces the economic viability and character of the area. The intent for 20 or more years has been to make the east side of Gurnee a vibrant and welcoming part of Gurnee. No matter the result of this vote, we owe it to the east side to work harder to enforce the existing ordinances to make it a more beautiful and thriving area of Gurnee. But also, our unhoused population needs our love, compassion, and help. They deserve the biggest and best possible place. Homelessness is not a them problem, it's an us problem. This is not a discussion on the merits nor deleterious effects of PADS nor their occupants. It's a question of modifying the zoning ordinance for an entire district. I do love our unhoused neighbors, and I appreciate the work of PADS and other such organizations, but I will not be voting to alter the text amendment.
Did Greg want to go first? I'd be glad to go last.
Well, we're on your side, so.
Gotcha. Thank you for allowing me to provide context on my decision. It's clear that residents and businesses do not want the proposed shelter in this location. This issue may not just be homelessness. It may be mental health and opioid abuse, which may not be easy to separate these realities. The shelter does not promote neighborhood safety or welfare. Shelter proponents have often stated anything is better than what is there currently. We've heard this all several times. But how much crime is okay? Did you ask any of the residents or businesses if they prefer to replace the motel with a shelter? I did ask. They do not. Better options were identified. PADS could assume the Ramada Inn site and combine their Waukegan Processing Center into this property with better access to services, a roomier facility, and possibly a smaller price tag, and could serve families. Crime at and surrounding the processing center is appearing out of control and could be better managed in a combined operation. Our family participated in the previous PADS church program wholeheartedly. My parents gave numerous years to the PADS church shelter program, and upon my father's death, we honored him with contributions to PADS, adding to our family's significant cash donations over the years. In my Gurnee trustee role, my decisions apply to all Gurnee residents and Gurnee businesses. Concerned residents submitted letters to the board repeatedly asking for our decision to protect them and to keep them safe. Now I'd like to read a letter from a Gurnee resident, and this letter was also emailed to the board this morning. I have firsthand experience working as a police officer for the city of Evanston. What I can tell you from this experience is that a homeless shelter looks wonderful on paper, but in reality, there are numerous issues that arise. Here are the day-to-day realities. The Margarita Inn has attracted homeless individuals from across the nation, bringing people as far from as California and Washington to our quiet little town. A seasoned officer can tell you the names of most of the homeless individuals in their beat, but recently this is no longer the case. First and foremost, Margarita Inn was never an issue until corrections for the homeless took over. The calls for service increased tremendously, especially in the first year of opening. It felt as if every time dispatch came on the air, there was another issue at the Margarita Inn again. Patrol would be dispatched not only on a daily basis, but would need to respond there on what felt like every shift for various calls, including drug overdoses, batteries, disturbances, sexual assaults, suicides, and more. Connections for the homeless ran the facility, but they were not actually located on site. There would be dozens of instances when law enforcement needed to get into the facility but could never get a hold of anyone from Connections to either let us in or to provide next of kin information or details. There would not only be calls at the Margarita Inn, but oftentimes at other locations with residents from the Margarita Inn being the cause of the disturbance. Retail thefts and burglaries have increased drastically as well. Panhandling is an all-time high in Evanston, and I believe it is partially due to the opening of the homeless shelter. When residents are kicked out due to breaking rules or violating policies set forth by Connections, they are not relocated to another facility or given another option. They are kicked out onto the street, which has caused the homeless population in Evanston to increase detrimentally in the last few years. Many local parks have been taken over during the day, and loitering downtown has increased, with the residents hanging around all hours of the day, panhandling, and often causing disturbances with passersby. The amount of resources that would be taken from the residents of Gurnee to go towards a homeless shelter would be devastating. When officers are constantly responding to calls for service at the Fairbridge Inn, this takes away from service and safety of all of our Gurnee residents. Please take this letter into consideration and vote no for the PADS fixed site homeless shelter at the Fairbridge Inn. Again, this was from a Gurnee resident.
May I say something? That letter is also not signed.
It was anonymous, and I spoke with the resident yesterday. It could be submitted anonymously. How many other letters were submitted anonymously?
Not many.
I spoke with the mayor last night, and he said he was comfortable with this process.
Okay. Mr. Garner?
Well, we live in one Gurnee. I've sat in this seat for over 14 years. This is probably the most difficult decision that I have ever had to make. I labored. Everybody on this board labored staff labored over the issue. So due diligence has been done. I've received phone calls, letters, people stopping me on the street, everywhere. So I was inspired to write a letter because I wasn't sure how I was going to vote on this thing either. And, you know, I had conversations with my fellow trustees, and some of them were waffling as much as I was. So I felt inspired to write a letter just summing up my thoughts in hopes that it might help them. You know, I've read a lot of the letters. I can't say I read every one of them, but I read a whole lot of letters. May have missed one or two. But, and I don't know how much of it's true and how much of it's false. It's a letter, and many of them weren't signed. But what I do know is I've listened to you. I've heard what you said. I've taken it to heart. I've tried to delineate between what was true and what was false. You know how we as human beings get when we start to talk about when we want what we want. We really want what we want, and we start to embellish on what we want. So I tried to you know, take out the bad and keep the good on both sides. I was inspired to write a letter myself to my fellow trustees. I'll share that with you because I want you to know that we took it serious. At least I took it seriously. Eastside residents are complaining about the lack of attention shown to their side of the village. They believe that we have failed in our attempts to revitalize the business district in their area. Now faced with PAD's application to purchase and convert the Fairbridge into a homeless shelter, residents see this as just another layer of betrayal. They have petitioned us via letter, public comment, and in person to cast a no vote on this application. The problem that we face is multifaceted, with issues not limited to the presence of a dilapidated hotel, homeless panhandlers begging for money, loiterers, prostitution, and drug-related activity, indecent activities, trespassing, and even catcalling. These fears that residents have expressed are real and must be addressed. It is my hope that we as a board on Monday will vote in a way that will best serve the community as a whole. A no vote to PADS will do absolutely nothing to change the current issues residents are experiencing. The fears they have will remain the same and will most likely worsen over time as the homeless population grows unaddressed. The Fairbridge Inn will continue to decline and will remain an eyesore for the public to behold for years. Resident complaints will be ongoing, and there will be little the village and law enforcement can do to alleviate them in a way that will bring satisfaction. However, a yes vote cleans and revitalizes the property and contributes to the improvement and betterment of the East Side. While it does bring more homeless individuals to a central location, there will be a managerial component that oversees operations and issues that arise unlike what is currently happening. This oversight should significantly reduce and deter crime and undesirable behavior associated with the Fairbridge Inn. A no vote is steeped in fear and does not address present or future concerns. A yes vote, in contrast, bravely becomes a solution to address the homeless dilemma we face in our community. It addresses the issue of safety, resident concerns, and the dilapidated condition of the hotel, while also bringing revitalization to the East Side. Also, let us not forget that as a board, we have the ability to strengthen the ordinance that applies to the application by adding provisions that would offer an additional layer of accountability for PADS. Let me be clear, as leaders, fear should not enter into the equation. We must courageously seek a working solution that will address safety concerns of our residents, bring hope to an ailing East Side business district, and provide a pathway for individuals struggling with homelessness. As you deliberate over the next few days, please keep in mind that casting any vote other than a yes is a non-solution to this problem plaguing our community. So all of us are not going to be happy tonight. This is just how it goes. This is a process that we have. It is fair. I have one of 5 votes tonight. If you ask me how it's going to go, I don't know. If you ask any one of them, they don't know. The sum total of our votes is going to determine where we are. And hopefully we as a board will make the right decision for Gurnee. We've done it hundreds of times. So we must trust the process. And that's what I ask of you, and that's what I've asked of my board members. So I just thank you guys for the energy that you put into this. This is your community. You're fighting for it. And hopefully we will make the right decision tonight that will propel us forward and stave off the issue of growing and unaddressed homelessness. Thank you.
I guess that just leaves a few final comments from me, since pretty much everything has been said and been addressed. We have all read your emails, read your letters, and have been very concerned about this issue, and it has affected all of us, as it has affected you all directly. And I'm very concerned for the residents and what you've had to deal with, but I don't know that I feel that this hotel and being a pads on a main artery through the village, not in the middle of a neighborhood, it's on the outskirts of the neighborhood, would still be an improvement for the area. So I want to just reiterate, we're very concerned about the East Side and have been for years. We tried to do and made the East Grand Corridor in 2016 a priority. Unfortunately, the intersection of 41 and Grand, which took forever to get healed, corrected, whatever you want to say, has injured the building on the East Side. But as already stated, we can't make people open up businesses on the East Side. We can encourage as best we can. And if you don't think Ellen doesn't work overtime at trying to bring businesses into our community, you are sadly mistaken. And as far as panhandlers, the West Side has, if you want to keep saying East and West, has its own share of panhandlers. And anybody that gives panhandlers cash is contributing to that problem. They don't want the food that people have left that we've had to clean up at 41. They want cash. And a lot of them are not really homeless. I believe this is a step in the right direction, that it will help that hotel and the unsightliness of the hotel. And I just want the best for Gurnee, for all of Gurnee. That being said, at this time, I would direct the deputy clerk to take a roll call vote, please.
Ross,
Aye.
Garner,
Aye.
O'Brien,
No.
Baums,
Aye.
Thornton,
No.
3 ayes, 2 nays.
Due to the failure of the text amendment receiving the required number of 4 votes, the board cannot consider the special use ordinance. As a result, do I have a motion to remove agenda number 2 under new business?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion by Trustee O'Brien and seconded by Trustee Thorstensen. Roll call vote, please.
Ross,
Aye.
Garner,
Aye.
O'Brien,
Aye.
Bums,
Aye.
Jorgensen,
Yes.
5 ayes.
Okay. We will then take a 5-minute recess.
We'll need a quick, we have a motion and a second, we'll do a voice.
Oh, I thought, oh, and we, do we have a first?
Motion for 5-minute adjournment.
Motion to take a 5-minute.
Second.
Motion. All in favor, say?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. 5-minute break.
I saw your radar. Hey, thanks. Keep up there. Do whatever.
Reconvening the meeting at this point, and all that we have left on the meeting tonight is the public comment. So anybody that would like to make a public comment to the board, you don't have to, but if you'd like to, then you can step up to the mic and state your name.
My name's Gregor Holbutt. I live on North Greenleaf Street, and this is just a general comment towards everybody in the room tonight. That when you walk out of here, you still need to, everybody needs to remember that we are all still neighbors. That no matter what side of the vote you were on, it doesn't matter at the end of the day when you walk out of here. We all still have to live next to each other and be respectful of each other's opinions, our thoughts, and everything else. So I just urge everybody to, no matter how it went this evening, and this was kind of something I prepared before, but no matter how it went, at the end of the day, we all still need to work together to kind of complete some of the comments that have been made as far as making the east side of town a little bit more welcoming, and maybe helping clean up some stuff, and also helping however we can our neighbors who are unhoused. So that's basically the gist of what I was getting at, and that's it.
Thank you. Please state your name.
Karen Rozwadowski, and I was going to say kind of that, so I was going to say ditto. Thank you, everybody, who's been showing up for all these meetings, because it is a hard choice. We all want to end homelessness, but this just wasn't the right place. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Please state your name, Mr. Depke.
Sean Depke, Gurnee. I've been here a long time. My family's been here a long time. Our building says 1929 on it, so that's how far we back go. McClure's is just a little older than we are. Been around a little longer. I'm glad you voted the way you did. That's the way it should have been. I don't know, and I would love an answer to why this was ever brought up. This should have never been brought up. The location was bad. The people didn't want it. The businesses didn't want it. And you put these people plus standing room only, 150 people to 1:30 in the morning. That's asinine. That's wrong. I can't believe you ran to 1:30 in the morning. People have jobs, people have kids and grandkids. There should be no meeting past 10 o'clock. I mean, this isn't rocket science here. Mayor, I don't understand what happened and why you brought this to us, or why you wanted us to put this down the people's throat. I'm glad it's over, but I hope this doesn't come up again. And one more thing, the parade. Do you guys have anything to do with the parade? I don't know who does. We sat there in front of my building. Jeannie Bombas, which I saw, talked to very briefly. 2 trucks went by from the village. 25 minutes later, nothing. And then many other things. An hour and 45 minutes plus for a 40-minute parade. I don't know who's in charge of the parade, but somebody's not doing a very good job. And there was a lot of upset taxpayers, fans, kids there. So if you have any influence, maybe you can get a parade to run right. Thanks.
Thanks, Sean. I'll take full blame for the length of the parade. That was how slow I was walking down the street. So that wasn't a joke. It was, I'll take blame for that. So Sean, you called it out. So the rest of what you said, I don't necessarily agree with, but that's okay. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Candy Stone again, Belle Plaine. My husband said I was a little harsh last time. If I offended anyone, I'm sorry. I don't have much expression because I have Bell's palsy. The one thing that I wanted to say to all my neighbors, to all the people who I rang their doorbells when it was dark and I had to talk to you through your Google or your Ring camera, I'm sorry, but that's how passionate I was about us being here today. We are all that we have. Like the man says, no matter what, we're all going to still be neighbors. If Pads ever needs help passing out food or standing in line, I'm an advocate, just not right here. I want women and children to have a safe place to live. Like one man said about their dignity, let people be able to have their own rooms because you never know how people are. You know, they said during COVID, oh, we got mental illness. I think we all might have a little bit of that here and there. But at the same token, we love our community, we love each other, we appreciate each other. If we just go by and nod or not even speak, we love our community. We love the dog walkers in the morning. You got to drive through. You only came to the block party, and then I heard you were at Big Dorms. I missed that. But nonetheless, I thank you all for your time. You know, some changes have got to be made. More of us have to show up here. We have to know what's going on. We have to be stronger as a unit together so we can know what kind of stuff is going on or is something we do or don't agree about. We got to come together. We got to speak to each other more and interact. Hey, did you hear something last night? Hey, but I'll be on the lookout. You know, we all have to just get together and do the right thing. It shouldn't just be this that brought us all together. We just have to really stick together. And from everything that happened today, no harm intended, but I think some changes are going to have to be made here and there. And I'm a strong advocate of change and new things and moving forward. And a lot of my counterparts here, me and all my neighbors, we all feel the same way. To the past people, again, my heart goes out to you. Like the one man said around here somewhere, oh, there are going to be pads everywhere. And I think that's great, just not in our community. And I hope they design it where people can get help. Get the help that they need. You know, have the adequate people there to help them because it's a lot going on in our neighborhood when the people walk by. And I don't know why people like Catholic Charities and all the other entities, why they aren't going to other hotels and motels and setting something up for people. Jury Beck, and I'm not sure what the other lady is, they were absolutely wonderful. They were absolutely great. I appreciate you guys so much and for including me and letting me be a big part of that. And all my neighbors, and especially the bus driver. I got to give it up for the bus driver because she really went out of her way. And now my grandbaby can perhaps practice outside on the rim so she can play for Viking this year. So thank you all for your time. I feel so much better, like a weight is lifted. I'm stressed every time I look around. I'm jumping up, peeking out the window, looking at the Ring camera. I don't have to do that all night. I'm thinking anymore. So thank you. I'm sorry if I offended anybody anywhere. I don't mean to not be compassionate, but I'm passionate about my neighborhood. And thank you all.
Thank you. Please state your name.
Hi, my name is Becky Kutsinis. First, I want to thank the Gurnee Police Department. Long hours. I think we clap, right? Long hours for months, not only at meetings, but helping all people in Gurnee, whether they shop here, they live here, they drive through here, walk through here, or are unhoused and need assistance at all hours of the day and night. Thank you to each of your families, because your families serve too. Thank you to each of our trustees. It was not an easy decision. I have served for 17 years in a different capacity. I have been on the other side of very long meetings, not till 1:30 in the morning though. But lots of public comments and letters. I understand how much each of you went through to read and think and listen and think and go out into public and think and hear some more. So thank you to each of you for your service and your dedication. Thanks to the staff who had to put together hundreds of pages of documentation, those that are here and those that are not, and all of the hours that it went through to that. And thank you to the members of our community. There were some on each end of the viewing of this situation. Thank you for speaking respectfully. I think 99.9% of people on all sides spoke respectfully. Thank you for engaging. I know sometimes it can be like an empty room and maybe people serving are wondering, does anybody notice? And so thank you for taking time out of your summer, regardless of your viewpoint, to engage with local government, because that's how local government knows how each of you feels about a decision. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Please state your name.
Rachel Thiem. I wanted to say thank you to everyone, especially the trustees, in their consideration to listening to each person, both for and opposed to the text amendment change and the special use permit. One thing this whole experience has taught me and my family is that every resident in this community needs to be more involved in our village's problems. Also in the growth of our community and the process for change. I am encouraged to see so many people, especially young people, that were involved and becoming more informed about our community and the workings of our local government. Personally, I have learned so much through this experience, and I'm hoping that in seeing my children and their classmates and so many high school students, that it opens their eyes. Teachers spoke with my kids about seeing them speak. I'm really encouraged to see the young people getting involved, both people who've lived here for a long time and of people who've lived here shortly. And it's our commitment, and I will move forward from here speaking with my family about also helping to solve the problem of homeless, not just in our area, but in the whole community. So it doesn't end here. And I think a lot of us in this community feel that way, and it's really opened our eyes to see what can we do more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Keith Owens, 6464 Doral Drive. Tom, speaking on behalf of the food vendors at Gurnee Days, I want to thank you for the 20-minute delay in the parade so that they could sell more food.
Unintended consequences, right?
Now the real work begins. Nobody won tonight. Everybody lost. So we really got to tackle what is all the issues that have really been brought crystal clear with this situation. I've spent my entire career in communication. And I can tell you that a lack of communication probably contributed as much, if not more, to the rancor, to the opposing points of view, to the long drawn-out process. I want to see both of these issues addressed as quickly and as efficiently as possible, and I want to be part of those solutions. Kevin, I haven't been available to talk to you thanks to my grandkids, but I want to do whatever I can based on my 35+ years of experience persuading people to do things that are in their best interest to help you advance the PAD's cause. Homelessness is a blight. I didn't know how much it impacted Gurnee until this evening when I saw one of the slides, which is part of the problem. More than one person tonight has said, well, you don't know. You don't know how much Ellen Dean works overtime, or you don't know that we've spent 30% of our capital budget on the East Gurnee, East Grand Avenue corridor. The problem with that statement is you don't know. We need to know. Now, I understand that you've canceled the next committee of the whole meeting for lack of things to do. But I'd like to see a committee of the whole meeting in the near future that talks about what we don't know about in terms of both the homeless problem in Gurnee and all the things that you've done that have worked, that have not worked, that you would like to do if you had the money to do it. Tom has committed to putting together a task force to do some of the things that I tried to outline and others have tried to outline. And Tom is an honorable man. And when he puts his mind to it, things get done. But it doesn't matter how many people were on either side. If there was a larger crowd here, I could ask, everybody raise your hand if you want to see Gurnee get better for everybody. And everybody probably would have raised their hands. But that is not what matters. It's what happens on that side of the dais. We start these meetings by saying, and to the republic for which it stands. We are a republic. We vote for you, and we trust you to make the right choices. 99.9% of the time, that's the case. This time, half the people thought you got it wrong. But I'm here to tell you, you all got it wrong. Because a problem like homelessness doesn't just appear because PADS comes and says, we'd like to put a shelter there. And the economic problems of East Gurnee, you cannot keep laying that on the 41 bypass. There's things to be done. The PADS shelter would have made the Fairbridge Inn a much better place. It probably would have reduced crime somewhat, but it would have done nothing for all the blighted, unoccupied, low-occupied buildings on East Grand Avenue. And if you say you've been doing all you can do, then I'm going to tell you it's not enough. Gurnee has tremendous resources, if I'm to believe the budgets. Gurnee has excellent staff because I've interacted with many of them. As I said earlier, all they need is the resources and the leadership to get things done. And by those things, I'm not just saying East Grand Avenue economics, I'm not just saying health, safety, and welfare of those communities. I'm not saying just panhandlers on the west side where I live. I'm also talking about the homeless problem in Lake County. A lot of Lake County officials spoke in favor of this. Some of them left rather quickly when you voted no to the text amendment. I hope they come back to the table just as quickly when Gurnee leads Lake County in addressing the homeless issue. Because until we address that, a lot of the stuff we're trying to do in Gurnee as in general, not just on the east side, is going to be much more difficult. As always, I thank you for your time and your commitment, and I reiterate once again, I am ready, willing, and able to help out in any way possible. Thank you.
Thank you. You almost didn't make it.
I know I've said enough, but I just want to quickly say thank you to all of you sitting up there for your time, your consideration. Special thanks to the board members who attended every single meeting, our block party, all of those events. Thank you, Austin, for forwarding all of the letters from the community members to the village board and to the mayor. I'm really hoping that we'll get the email system to the village improved and have some better communication between the community and the village board and yourself, Mayor, and maybe that lighten the load for Austin there. And lastly, I just want to second what Keith Owen said about the task force. Let's use the momentum going forward and make these improvements in East Gurnee. I have people ready and willing to volunteer their time and their services, so let's get this scheduled and let's do this. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, there being no further public comment, the floor is closed. And is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion by Trustee Baumus, second by Trustee Garner. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Have a good evening, everybody.